In the enigma of the darkened vasts, in the passion and self-loss of the infinite, when all was plunged in the negating void, non-being's night could never have been saved if being had not plunged into the dark, carrying with it its triple mystic cross. Invoking in world-time the timeless truth, bliss changed to sorrow, knowledge made ignorant, God's force turned into a child's helplessness, can bring down heaven by their sacrifice. A contradiction founds the base of life. The eternal, the divine reality has faced itself with its own contraries. Being became the void and conscious force, nescience and walk of a blind energy, and ecstasy took the figure of world pain. In a mysterious dispensation's law, a wisdom that prepares its far-off ends, plans so to start her slow eonic game. A blindfold search and wrestle and fumbling clasp of a half-seen nature and a hidden soul, a game of hide-and-seek in twilight rooms, a play of love and hate and fear and hope, continues in the nursery of mind, its hard and heavy romp of self-born twins. At last the struggling energy can emerge and make the voiceless being in wider fields. Then can the see and speak and breast to breast in a larger consciousness, a clearer light, the two embrace and strive and each know each, regarding closer now the playmate's face. Even in these formless coilings, he could feel matter's response to an infant stir of soul. In nature he saw the mighty spirit concealed, watched the weak birth of a tremendous force, pursued the riddle of Godhead's tentative pace, heard the faint rhythms of a great unborn muse. Then came a fierier breath of waking life, and there arose from the dim gulf of things the strange creations of a thinking sense, existences half real and half dream. A life was there that hoped not to survive. Beings were born who perished without trace. Events that were a formless drama's limbs and actions driven by a blind creature will. A seeking power found out its road to form. Patterns were built of love and joy and pain, and symbol figures for the moods of life. An insect hedonism fluttered and crawled, and basked in a sunlit nature's surface thrills, and dragon raptures, python agonies, crawled in the marsh and mire, and licked the sun. Huge armored strengths shook a frail, quaking ground. Great puissant creatures with a dwarfish brain, and pygmy tribes imposed their small life drift. In a dwarf model of humanity, nature now launched the extreme experience and master point of her design's caprice. Luminous result of her half-conscious climb, on rungs twixt her sublimities and grotesque, to massive from infinitesimal shapes, to a subtle balancing of body and soul, to an order of intelligent littleness. Around him, in the moment beats of time, the kingdom of the animal self arose, where deed is all and mind is still half-born, and the heart obeys a dumb, unseen control. The force that works by the light of ignorance, her animal experiment began, crowding with conscious creatures her world scheme. but to the outward only were they alive. Only they replied to touches and surfaces, and to the prick of need that drove their lives. A body that knew not its own soul within, there lived and longed, had wrath and joy and grief. A mind was there that met the objective world as if a stranger or enemy at its door. Its thoughts were kneaded by the shocks of sense. It captured not the spirit in the form. It entered not the heart of what it saw. It looked not for the power behind the act. It studied not the hidden motive in things, nor strove to find the meaning of it all. Beings were there who wore a human form. Absorbed they lived in the passion of the scene, but knew not who they were or why they lived. Content to breathe, to feel, to sense, to act, life had for them no aim save nature's joy, and the stimulus and delight of outer things. Identified with the spirit's outward shell, they worked for the body's wants, they craved no more. The veiled spectator watching from their depths fixed not his inward eye upon himself, nor turned to find the author of the plot. He saw the drama only and the stage. There was no brooding stress of deeper sense, the burden of reflection was not borne. Mind looked on nature with unknowing eyes, adored her boons, and feared her monstrous strokes. It pondered not on the magic of her laws, it thirsted not for the secret wells of truth, but made a register of crowding facts, and strung sensations on a vivid thread. It hunted and it fled and sniffed the winds, or slothed inert in sunshine and soft air. It sought the engrossing contacts of the world, but only to feed the surface sense with bliss. These felt life's quiver in the outward touch. They could not feel behind the touch the soul. To guard their form of self from nature's harm, to enjoy and to survive was all their care. The narrow horizon of their days was filled with things and creatures that could help and hurt. The world's values hung upon their little self. Isolated, cramped in the vast unknown, to save their small lives from surrounding death, they made a tiny circle of defense against the siege of the huge universe. They preyed upon the world and were its prey, but never dreamed to conquer and be free. Obeying the world power's hints and firm taboos, a scanty part they drew from a rich store. There was no conscious code and no life plan. The patterns of thinking of a little group fixed a traditional behavior's law. Ignorant of soul, save as a wraith within, tied to a mechanism of unchanging lives, and to a dull, usual sense and feelings beat, they turned in grooves of animal desire. In walls of stone fenced round, they worked and warred. Did by a banded selfishness a small good, or wrought a dreadful wrong and cruel pain on sentient lives, and thought they did no ill. Ardent from the sack of happy, peaceful homes, and gorged with slaughter, plunder, rape, and fire, they made of human selves their helpless prey, a drove of captives led to lifelong woe, or torture, a spectacle made and holiday, mocking or thrilled by their torn victims' pangs, admiring themselves as titans and as gods. Proudly they sang their high and glorious deeds, and praised their victory and their splendid force. An animal in the instinctive herd, pushed by life impulses, forced by common needs, each in his own kind saw his ego's glass. All served the aim and action of the pack. Those like himself, by blood or custom kin, to him were parts of his life, his adjunct selves, his personal nebulas, constituent stars, satellite companions of his solar eye. A master of his life's environment, a leader of a huddled human mass, herding for safety on a dangerous earth, he gathered them round him as if minor powers to make a common front against the world, or weak and soul on an indifferent earth as a fortress for his undefended heart, or else to heal his body's loneliness. In others than his kind he sensed a foe, an alien unlike force to shun and fear, a stranger and adversary to hate and slay. Or he lived as lives the solitary brute, at war with all he bore his single fate. Absorbed in the present act, the fleeting days, none thought to look beyond the hour's gains, or dreamed to make this earth a fairer world, or felt some touch divine surprise his heart. The gladness that the fugitive moment gave, the desire grasped, the bliss, the experience won, movement and speed and strength were joy enough, and bodily longings shared and quarrel and play, and tears and laughter and the need called love. In war and clasp, these life wants joined the all-life, wrestlings of a divided unity, inflicting mutual grief and happiness in ignorance of the self forever one. Arming its creatures with delight and hope, a half-awakened nation struggled there to know by sight and touch the outside of things. Instinct was formed. In memory's crowded sleep, the past lived on as in a bottomless sea. Inverting into half-thought the quickened sense, she felt around for truth with fumbling hands, clutched to her the little she could reach and seize, and put aside in her subconscious cave. So must the dim being grow in light and force, and rise to his higher destiny at last, look up to God and round at the universe, and learn by failure and progress by fall, and battle with environment and doom, by suffering discover his deep soul, and by possession grow to his own vasts. Halfway she stopped and found her path no more. Still, nothing was achieved but to begin, yet finished seemed the circle of her force. Only she had beaten out sparks of ignorance. Only the life could think and not the mind. Only the sense could feel and not the soul. Only was lit some heat of the flame of life, some joy to be, some rapturous leaps of sense. All was an impetus of half-conscious force, a spirit sprawling, drowned in dense life foam, a vague self-grasping at the shape of things. Behind all moved seeking for vessels to hold, a first raw vintage of the grapes of God. On earth's mud, a spilth of the supernal bliss, intoxicating the stupefied soul and mind. A heady wine of rapture dark and crude, dim, uncast, yet into spiritual form. Obscure inhabitant of the world's blind core, an unborn Godhead's will, a mute desire. A third creation now revealed its face. A mold of body's early mind was made. A glint of light kindled the obscure world force. It dowered a driven world with the seeing idea and armed the act with thought's dynamic point. A small thinking being watched the works of time. A difficult evolution from below called a master intervention from above. Else this great, blind, inconscient universe could never have disclosed its hidden mind, or even in blinkers worked in beast and man the intelligence that devised the cosmic scheme. At first he saw a dim, obscure mind power moving concealed by matter and dumb life. A current thin, it streamed in life's vast flow, tossing and drifting under a drifting sky. Amid the surge and glimmering tremulous wash, released in splash of sense and feelings waves. In the deep midst of an insentient world, its huddled waves and foam of consciousness ran, pressing and eddying through a narrow strait, carrying experience in its crowded pace. It flowed, emerging into upper light from the deep pool of its subliminal birth to reach some high existence still unknown. There was no thinking self. Aim there was none. All was unorganized stress and seekings vague. Only to the unstable surface rose sensations, stabs, and edges of desire, and passion's leaps and brief emotions' cries, a casual colloquy of flesh with flesh, a murmur of heart to longing wordless heart, glimmerings of knowledge with no shape of thought, and jets of subconscious will or hunger's pulse. All was dim sparkle on a foaming top. It whirled around a drifting shadow self on an inconscient flood of force in time. Then came the pressure of a seeing power that drew all into a dancing turbid mass, circling around a single luminous point, center of reference in a conscious field, figure of a unitary light within. It lit the impulse of the half-sentient flood. Even an illusion gave of fixity, as if a sea could serve as firm soil. That strange observing power imposed its sight. It forced on flux a limit and a shape. It gave its stream a lower narrow bank, drew lines to snare the spirit's formlessness. It fashioned the life-mind of bird and beast, the answer of the reptile and the fish, the primitive pattern of the thoughts of man. A finite movement of the infinite came winging its way through a wide air of time. A march of knowledge moved in nescience and guarded in the form a separate soul. Its right to be immortal it reserved, but built a wall against the siege of death and threw a hook to clutch eternity. A thinking entity appeared in space. A little ordered world broke into view, where being had prison room for act and sight, a floor to walk, a clear but scanty range. An instrument personality was born, and a restricted, clamped intelligence consented to confine in narrow bounds its seeking. It tied the thought to visible things, prohibiting the adventure of the unseen, and the soul's tread through unknown infinities. A reflex reason, nature habits glass, illumined life to know and fix its field, accept a dangerous ignorant brevity, and the inconclusive purpose of its walk, and profit by the hour's precarious chance in the allotted boundaries of its fate. A little joy and knowledge satisfied, this little being tied into a knot and hung on a bulge of its environment, a little curve cut off in measureless space, a little span of life in all vast time. A thought was there that planned, a will that strove, but for small aims within a narrow scope, wasting unmeasured toil on transient things. It knew itself a creature of the mud. It asked no larger law, no loftier aim. It had no inward look, no upward gaze. A backward scholar on logic's rickety bench, indoctrinated by the erring sense, it took appearance for the face of God, for casual lights, the marching of the suns, for heaven, a starry strip of doubtful blue, aspects of being feigned to be the whole. There was a voice of busy interchange, a marketplace of trivial thoughts and acts, a life soon spent, a mind the body's slave. Here seemed the brilliant crown of nature's work, and tiny egos took the world as means to sate a while dwarf lusts and brief desires. In a death-closed passage saw life start and end, as though a blind alley were creation's sign. As if for this, the soul had coveted birth in the wonderland of a self-creating world and the opportunities of cosmic space. This creature, passionate only to survive, fettered to puny thoughts with no wide range, and to the body's needs and pangs and joys, this fire, growing by its fuel's death, increased by what it seized and made its own. It gathered and grew and gave itself to none. Only it hoped for greatness in its den, and pleasure and victory in small fields of power, and conquest of life room for self and kin, an animal limited by its feeding space. It knew not the immortal in its house. It had no greater, deeper cause to live. In limits only it was powerful, acute to capture truth for outward use. Its knowledge was the body's instrument. Absorbed in the little works of its prison house, it turned around the same unchanging points in the same circle of interest and desire, but thought itself the master of its jail. Although for action, not for wisdom made, thought was its apex or its gutter's rim. It saw an image of the external world and saw its surface, but knew no more. Out of a slow, confused, embroiled self-search, mind grew to a clarity cut out, precise, a gleam enclosed in a stone ignorance. In this bound thinking's narrowed leadership, tied to the soil, inspired by common things, attached to a confined familiar world, amid the multitude of her motived plots, her changing actors and her million masks, life was a play monotonously the same. There were no vast perspectives of the spirit, no swift invasions of unknown delight, no golden distances of wide release. This petty state resembled our human days, but fixed to eternity of changeless type, a moment's movement doomed to last through time. Existence bridge-like spanned the inconscient gulfs, a half-illumined building in a mist, which from a void of form arose to sight and jetted out into a void of soul. A little light in a great darkness born, life knew not where it went, nor whence it came. Around all floated still the nascent haze. End of Canto 4.